Today in cloud gaming news, we're going to be talking about Stadia, PlayStation, but we're going to begin with a story on Amazon Luna, as two new games have just been added to the Luna Plus channel. The first of which is one that we previously covered, so I won't get too far into it, but it's Okami HD. It's a beloved classic from Capcom, and I highly advise you to play it if you haven't already. It sports beautiful visuals, unique gameplay, and a really great story that will have you interested from start to finish. But now let's get over to the second game that they just announced for Luna Plus and is already available to play, and that's Sonic Colors Ultimate by Sega. It appears both Amazon and Sega are starting to build quite a relationship together, as we're starting to see more and more of their games enter the Luna Plus channel. What makes it very interesting to me is that Sega isn't opting out to have their own channel yet, which I kind of expect to come at some point down the road. After all, that's kind of the pitch Amazon Luna always had for these companies, is that every channel can be dedicated to a specific publisher or a specific niche and genre. Regardless, it's great to see that Sonic Colors Ultimate has arrived on the Luna Plus channel, as it's really starting to build up a library of pretty substantial games that are worth playing. While I haven't played it myself, I have heard that Sonic Colors is one of the better entries into the franchise throughout the years. And I do also want to point out for those interested, before we move on to the next topic, that there is cooperative multiplayer in the game. But do be aware that you need to unlock those multiplayer levels by progressing through the single player campaign. But now let's move over to the PlayStation streaming news, and we have 2 points of discussion to talk about. As we all know, PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus are getting the much needed revamp, but we're starting to get some more information about when that rollout is going to begin. It's worth pointing out that the following dates are just targets set by Sony, so it's not guaranteed to arrive on that day, but it should be around it at the very least. Asia markets excluding Japan are set for May 23rd, Japan is targeting June 1st, Americas is June 13th, and Europe is the last at June 22nd. In addition to this, Sony also confirmed that they will be expanding cloud streaming access to the following locations for a total of 30 markets with cloud streaming. And those markets are Bulgaria, Croatia, Czech Republic, Greece, Hungary, Malta, Poland, the Republic of Cyprus, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. That means all of them will be offering the premium tier of the new PlayStation Plus launch. Lastly, they did also say to expect more information as we get closer to launch, and I'm expecting to see some sort of games list for sure. But for those of us who don't want to wait that long, well, it does appear that some have been leaked over at the ratings board in Korea. The Siphon Filter franchise, including 1, 2, Dark Mirror, and Logan's Shadow, have been rated for both the PS4 and PS5. I think it's safe to assume that these are being rated for the new service that will include some classic games from previous PlayStation eras. Now personally, I've actually never played the Siphon Filter franchise despite being with PlayStation since the very first one, but this gives me a good excuse to try it out. I've heard pretty good things of it, and there's always a lot of people who want to see some sort of new remake, remaster, or new entry into the franchise itself. Though with this leak happening, it does beg the question whether or not we're going to see even more classics rated before Sony's even ready to announce them officially. If Sony plays their cards right, they could really nail down quite a library of classic games that are must-plays, and I'm super excited to see what titles actually end up making the cut. The PS1, PS2, and PSP era had some great hits that definitely went underplayed for sure. Let me know what classic PlayStation title you'd like to see in that subscription down below. Now, there is still Stadia news we need to cover, but a big piece of news just came in that I really want to discuss on the channel before we get to that. Bloomberg.com just recently posted that Ubisoft is drawing buyout interest. To be very clear, this does not mean that Ubisoft itself is looking to be bought out, or that shareholders are willing to even pursue a deal. But according to the article, several private equity firms including Blackstone Incorporated and KKR & Co. have been studying the French business for quite some time. It's important to remember that the family of Ubisoft chairman Yves Guillemot is the company's biggest investor with a 15% stake. And recently, Ubisoft shares have fallen 41% in Paris trading over the past year, giving it a market value of about 4.8 billion euros. That means that at the end of the day, if there's enough money, there could very well be a deal made. After all, Ubisoft themselves have stated that they're not opposed to the idea of being acquired. But let me just say, if that's the case, I'd much rather have anyone else in the video game industry acquire Ubisoft than any sort of private equity. If a deal like that were to go through with one of them, it could very well mean the end of the Ubisoft we know here today. And despite how you feel about them, that's quite a scary thought when you consider just how many jobs they actually provide the industry. Not to mention, they are cloud gaming's biggest supporters, and that's not something to be guaranteed if they get bought out by anyone else and they get to call the shots. But at the end of the day, this is all extremely early on, so don't get too worried about it, but it is something worth keeping an eye out on, and I'll definitely be doing so as well. Now let's move over to the Stadia news of the day, of which there appear to be 3 games that are heading to Stadia real soon. 2 of which have been leaked by the ESRB, and the third which has been rumored to come to Stadia for quite some time. The first of which is Through the Darkest of Times, which comes from the publisher Handy Games. In this title, you'll get to experience the darkest of times in 4 chapters, fight for freedom, weaken the regime, and lead your resistance group by planning activities, finding collaborators, and trying not to get caught. And you'll have to bear the weight of responsibility as you make difficult decisions and face the dire consequences of those choices. As we know, Handy Games is a huge supporter of Stadia, so this isn't too big of a surprise, but it is always good to see. The second title that got leaked is one that I'm actually really happy to see, and that's Hot Wheels Unleashed. It comes from Milestone SRL, and it's a game that I've already played myself. It looks great, it plays great, and if you're a Hot Wheels fan, it's a must-have. And in case you need the confirmation, yes, it does have a track editor. To be clear, the game isn't perfect by any means, it has its own fair share of issues and difficulty spikes, but genuinely speaking, it's a dream come true for any Hot Wheels fans. Now, I've already spent my time playing it, but I'm more than happy to see that the Stadia community is going to get a shot at this game, and it's going to mean a lot for the racing fans on Stadia for sure. The last title in question is coming to Stadia really soon, and that's the House of the Dead remake, which is slated to arrive April 28th. It's based on the 1996 arcade on-rail shooter, and it is a classic for anyone who's into light gun games. What I find very interesting about this game in particular is that there are some rumored Stadia motion controls that have been in the works through the APK insights we've been seeing from 9to5 Google. I did suspect and talk about this being the perfect use case for those motion controls, but 9to5 Google's writer, Kyle Bradshaw, recently clarified that Stadia's motion controls are far more limited than what people think they are. He mentioned that it was more like leaning your phone in different directions to mimic controller inputs rather than true motion controls. Regardless, April 28th isn't far from now, and that's when this game is expected to launch, so it shouldn't be too long before we find out. Now, before wrapping everything up, I do want to leave a quick note about Hot Wheels Unleashed and The Darkest of Times. I genuinely believe that they're porting these games over due to the new low-effort porting tools that Stadia has been hyping up for quite some time. Google did share that both of those studios do have access to the toolkit, and they will be rolling it out to more publishers and developers later on. If this is a glimpse of what's to come, that means some very exciting stuff for Stadia for sure, and I'll definitely be making a full-on video just about that topic, but I did want to point it out here because I do think we're starting to see the benefits of it already. Either way, that does wrap up all the cloud gaming news of the day. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful at all, be sure to hit that like button as it really does help the channel out, and if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. Today's end of video message is simply going to be asking you what game you plan on playing this weekend. Let me know down below, I'd love to hear what you're gaming. As always, thanks for watching, this has been The Virtual Cloud, giving you the latest and greatest on everything cloud gaming related, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds.